Welcome to The Network, a modern podcast version of the Negro Motorist Green Book. I've had the chance to interview some of my favorite people. Every episode is designed to help our community navigate the funky four corners of life. We are here to help the physical, mental, spiritual, and financial health of Black people living in and traveling through America. Subscribe to The Network. You never know, you might need it. All right, so in the words of the great American poet Stanley Kirk Burrell, you may know him as Hammer. Let's get it started. All right. Today's guest is Nichelle Pinkney. Nichelle has been a social studies educator for the past 17 years as a classroom teacher, a K through 12 curriculum director. She has trained teachers all over the world. That means she's big time, y'all. That means she's big time. So, make sure you clap for her, right? Nichelle holds a master's of art in educational administration and a bachelor's degree from Salem College in sociology and women's studies. Nichelle has found passion in providing equitable education to every student. She has worked to revise curriculum to ensure that it is diverse, equitable, and inclusive for all students and for all teachers. Ladies and gentlemen, y'all welcome Nichelle Pinkney. Nichelle, how are you today?
I am blessed. You make me sound really good.
Listen, I'm just reading what the bio says. So if it's good, it sounds good.
Yeah,
That means that, the rubber has met the road and you're good at what you do. That's what that
yeah,
means. That's what
it's
that
a
means.
blessing.
Okay, so before we begin, Nichelle, so we will have some people watching on YouTube, others will be listening. So if they would like to follow you and get to know you a little bit more, is there any way that our listeners and watchers can find you? Is there a Twitter, an Instagram, an email, a web page, anything like that?
So I am intermediate at Twitter. I'm getting better at it. So of course anyone can follow me. I'm all about that. It's Miss MSNIKKI_P. So it's Miss Nikki P. And anyone can follow me. Um, I share a lot of I'm an educator first, so of course I share a lot of educational things. I share some political stuff, but I try to, be careful with how far I go with some of that political stuff. So, yes, please add me on your Twitter. I would love to get to know more people in the community. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, and y'all can learn some things about equitable education,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
All right, so um let's give flowers. So one of the things I love doing here is I love giving people the opportunity to give flowers. Let's not wait until somebody leaves this earthly plane to give them flowers. So who would you like to give flowers today?
So I'm gonna do two people. First is gonna be my parents, because I'm a first generation college graduate. And if you ask, you let them tell it, they could probably write a better bio than the person who wrote my bio for me. They would go on and on. And so, because of their grit and because of their determination and instilling in us that we were more than what we were taught in school, it made me want to do more. And it made me want to make sure that other kids knew about that, hence how I became an educator. And then lastly, I want to give flowers to a lady named Julie Stern. She is an author. She is an educational genius. If she heard this, she'd be like, I can't believe she's doing that. But I think she put me in rooms that I probably would not have been in if it wasn't for her. And that's a big feat because she had an opportunity to do certain things and she was like, I'm not the person for this, but I do know somebody who is. And so that's speaking she spoke life into the work and what she saw in me when a lot of people are so busy chasing money that they are like, oh, I'm gonna do it, and they may not be the best, but she felt like, no, I'm not. Like, not that she couldn't do it, but she knew someone better, and that was what set me up to be able to do some of the things that I've been able to do.
That is awesome.
Hmm.
That is awesome. So I want to, before we get into your why, brother is in oil and gas. And they had a seminar, and the person came to the seminar and they talked about mentors and sponsors,
Hmm.
right? And the sponsor is the person who speaks your name in the rooms that you're not in yet, and they help you get to those rooms. So that's the first thing I thought about when you were giving flowers, right? So that is awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. This tell me her name
Her name
again.
is
What's her
Julie
name?
Stern. She is she's just awesome. She put me in a place where and when I met her, she was at a conference speaking, and I was just like, "Oh my God, she is speaking my language." And that's literally how we met. And she was like, "Yeah, I want someone like you on my team to work with." And I don't do a lot for her right now just because of the current job I have is a lot, but she, like I said, spoke my name in rooms that I probably wouldn't have been in, or I wouldn't have even gotten an opportunity to be in. And that's something we should be doing for people. And a lot of times people don't want to do that because they want to just be in
That
the room.
listen, that is, I haven't met Julie yet. I haven't met Julie yet, but it sounds like she's got a heart of gold.
Hmm.
Um to really speak someone's name, right? And to help them get into rooms that they're not in yet. That's that's vision. A lot of people don't have that vision. Now, I want to revisit this as well. First generation college graduate.
Hmm.
It is in the year 2023. I don't know if a lot of people realize that we still have first generation graduates, be it high school, be it college. But when you were talking about your parents and being a first generation graduate, you said we. You said that they made sure that we had. So, are you talking about your siblings? You have
Hmm.
siblings?
I am, I guess, I guess they would say I'm the middle child, but technically I'm not. I guess I would be. So I'm the middle child. So I have siblings. I have um, an older sister, a twin sister, and a younger brother who thinks that he's the oldest. And out of all of us, we've done different things in life. So just I want to throw that out there. I am one of the only ones with my college degree, but they do like amazing things as well. Like they're all doing things um that my parents can be proud of. Like they're um raising their families. I watch my brother every day with him and his wife and their children, and I'm just in awe um that, well, I'm just gonna say, a young black man taking care of his kids and then her child, and then just making sure that all of these things happen. And it's awesome to see everybody takes journeys, but he took this journey and
Right.
he's there. And then I watch my two sisters, one who was married and then just walked from it because it wasn't what it was supposed to be, in a time where people would be like, "Girl, you need to stay." And she was like, "Nope, I got to do this for my girls." And everything she does is to show them this is what it looks like. And then to watch my twin sister be a part of that group, I used to use her as an example in my class a lot, and not tell them it was my twin, but talk about how she works every day. And though that may look different to some people, I see somebody who has a work ethic that is just beyond. And a lot of times people don't think about that when they think about the world we live in. When I hear people talk about what people should and shouldn't have, well, if people just worked, or if people just did these things, and I just look at examples of people I know that are doing all the things we say that people should be doing to be successful, but then it's not, and it's because it's not an equitable playing field. But that's the I'm not going to go any further than that. But because it's not an equitable playing field initially, so then they're doing all these things, but how far can they go because of how it was already set up?
Yeah. And that is that's so real. And I think if you only have lived or seen life from one perspective,
Hmm.
then you don't realize that all these other different perspectives exist, right?
Yeah.
And then, there are people who just can't believe that these other perspectives exist. And life is not it's not a 500-piece puzzle.
No.
All of the pieces don't really necessarily fit,
Yeah.
right? We get a picture, there's like this picture on the box, but all the pieces don't really make that picture if things weren't
Yeah.
equitable, right?
Yep.
So, um, so of course we're going to talk about education, right? But I want to, so I'm gonna say this. I wrote this on my note
Okay.
card. Education is. and just take it and run with it from there.
Education is and should be the equalizer for all.
Okay. Education is and should be the equalizer for all. Why isn't it? Or what are some things, if either that question, or how do we make education the equalizer? How do we move education towards being the equalizer that it can be?
Well, we have to first acknowledge that our education system was initially built um, not for everybody that we're servicing right now. It wasn't built that way, and that's not even. I'm not even going into race there. I'm just going into the haves and the have-nots. Initially,
Right.
education
Yeah,
was
that's it's also
yeah. So
economic.
we'll just go with that one. It was initially made to separate who is going to become something, who is going to get something versus who is not. Um, and so because we know that, even though, and then the public system, the public school system, then initially, then after that was like, well, we're just going to educate boys, and it's not even all boys, just a certain group. So now we
Hmm.
have, if you can afford it, or now if you have the right, if you were born a certain way, then if you were born with a certain skin tone, right? So then as we keep
Hmm.
going, it gets to the point where we're supposed to be equalizing it. And then we have this idea of now everyone should go to school together, which some people could argue was that a good thing or a bad thing. Have a whole lesson. I used to teach a whole lesson on if this was a good thing or a bad thing for my students.
Hmm.
Um, so that idea of initially recognizing what it was meant to be and what have we done to make it not be that. And so ways that we can fix that is acknowledging our antiquated rules that don't exist in certain communities, right? So understanding that a rule in one community may not look the same in another community, because of social norms, because of cultural norms, because of cues that we have. Acknowledging that we can have people from other cultures come into our neighborhoods and schools and understand that, but help them to understand those cultural norms, because a lot of times we don't do that either. I'm going to speak to our men out there. The education system is starving for strong men, like yourself, that are there to speak into the lives of our young men, but into our young girls who don't see strong men in their lives. Same thing with women, in the education field, for our boys who don't see strong women in their lives. It's just our roles. There's so many pieces I could say that we could fix on it, but the first one is acknowledging that it's not a perfect system. Nothing we build is perfect. So it's a imperfect system that we need to work, that we need to meet the needs of everyone. So then, but we to do that, we have to acknowledge where the holes or gaps are. And just because there are holes and gaps doesn't mean we're unsuccessful. It just means I went to a training not too long ago, and it talked about you can't fill a gap if you don't say what the gap is. And I think a lot of times in education, we don't want to admit some of those gaps. Like, you've interacted with me before and you've heard me say, no, nope, this was a fail. We messed up right here. So now we're going to go back and fix
Right.
that. But a lot of rooms I'm in, people are not willing to say, I, I, or we, or the team, we made a mistake here. So now we got to go back. It's very much who else made the mistake versus acknowledging what is our mistake and how can we fix that mistake so that others can improve from where we are. And that's a big thing to be able to say, yep, I made a mistake. This isn't right. Let's go back.
A mistake is another way of learning,
Hmm. Yep.
right? So, in what I do, I encourage the people that I'm around to make mistakes, because then we're going to learn that, hey, this is not the way to do
Hmm.
it. We're going to do it. We tried it this way. Now let's try it another way. So it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad that um, we won't, you know, call a gap a gap.
Hmm.
Let's just call, or like Ayanla says it. Let's call a thing a
Yeah.
thing. Let's call a thing a thing so that it can be fixed.
Hmm.
Um, that's a little disturbing. disheartening,
Mhm.
frustrating to hear. But we have to keep working. You said something that was, I thought was very, very profound, and that it's, it's not perfect. And I don't want people to, I hope people aren't looking for a perfect educational system, right?
Yeah.
So a Mercedes is a beautiful vehicle, but it has to have maintenance,
Mhm.
right? If we don't maintain it, then it's just going to be a beautiful car that goes nowhere. And I think that's what education is. If we don't maintain it, it has the ability to make to be the equalizer, right? But we have to maintain it. If we need to change the spark plugs out, let's change the spark plugs out. So let me ask this question. In general, does education need new mechanics?
Yes, I think so. I think new mechanics to learn the new ways of doing things. I listen to people all the time talk about and one of the things we talked about in my bio is that I've trained people in other countries, which has been eye opening, right?
Big
Um
time, big time.
it's been eye opening. Who did think this girl from a small, Texas town would be talking about, I'm going to this country to present, or I'm meeting with this group to present about this how we do things. But there's one thing that is key is when I walk into some of those rooms, no one else looks like me, but no one is alarmed that it's me giving the advice. It's an interesting thing. Whereas in some places I can walk in and I already feel the shift in the room, which is unfortunate. But hey, I just if you can't tell from this, I'm just like, hey. I'm here. You got to pay me anyway. So let's get this conversation going, right? So that's the first step, like acknowledging that we can learn from different people, different types of people, different backgrounds. I also think sometimes in education, our door is shut if they're not an educator, right? If
Mhm,
we feel like
mhm.
they haven't taught, I remember, and I will say, I was one of those teachers at one point that'd be like, "Oh my God, they're not even in the classroom anymore. So why are they telling me this and this and this?" But as someone who's no longer quote unquote in the classroom, um, I tell people all the time, but I got in this role because of how good I was in the classroom. So not everybody, let's clarify that, but there are people that get in roles because people saw them and was like, we have to duplicate this. Like we need people to see this so that everybody else can do this and so that we can see more of this. So I think the mechanics is more or less like rethinking. We had an opportunity at one point to rethink what education looks like, but I still think we had a box that we were trying to fit it in. And so it has to look this way. And if it doesn't look this way, then we're not doing it. And I even think that's the issue with some of the things, with some of the laws, legislations being passed across the country, is parents, people in my age group and older, like this is what it looked like when I went to school, but my kids, it doesn't look like this. So then there's something wrong. This is the narrative that I was told. So this is the real history. What my kids are being told is wrong. And so really realizing that as we get older, as things develop, one of my sayings I hate when people say incorrectly is they're like, don't reinvent the wheel. It's one of the dumbest sayings ever because the last time I checked, the wheels that I'm rolling on aren't stone. Okay. They were
Right.
reinvented. They kept reinventing, reimagining what it looked like. And so each time that wheel has evolved and it doesn't look the same, it's doing somewhat the same thing, but it looks different. So on my car outside, it's not a stone 4 stone wheels that's carrying me through because someone thought, hey, you know what? This needs to be evolved. And it's evolved from it's not a wagon wheel anymore. It's not being drawn by
That's
horses.
right.
Like
That's
it
right.
has evolved. So the idea of no, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You do need to reinvent the wheel. That's that's how we got where we are. So acknowledging that things have to change, we have to adjust with the times, we have to move with the times, and that doesn't mean throwing it all out, but that means how do we change the framework that we have?
No, we're not the Flintstones,
Mm-mm.
right? Nobody's gonna put wagon wheels on their vehicle. Why? I don't know why, and this is kind of more rhetorical. I don't know why people are so resistant to change when change is the only constant. I mean, I have some theories, right? So I'm my background is psychology. That's what my educational training was in. And I kind of have some theories about why people don't want to change, and I think at its most base level, it's comfort zone,
Mhm,
right? But I do not understand that. I'm a basketball coach as well. You know that.
mhm.
And if I when I first started coaching, I coached the way that I was
Yeah.
coached. It was the dumbest thing in the world. It was I got results, right? I got results, but um years down the line, a friend of mine recommended a book, and the book was called What Got You Here Won't Get You There.
Mhm,
And I had to adjust. I had to make changes. I had to look at my kids, my players, and figure out what worked best for them. They weren't going to play basketball the way I played basketball. Coaching them the way I was coached didn't yeah, it just wasn't working anymore, right? It had gotten us to a certain point, but it wasn't going to get us to the next thing. And for the life of me, Nichelle, I do not understand why that is. I'm not even going to say why it's so hard for people to comprehend, but I think a lot of people are just resistant.
mhm.
And that's I'm and not even just in education, just in everyday life. Let me ask this question. Um why, if we can answer this question, if you have an answer to this question and if it can be answered, why is education political?
It's about control, I think, after at the end of the day. So I can answer this two ways. Most
Hmm.
of my training before I got into this, I was a government teacher. Um, so
Okay.
then that's one way I can answer it. It's a state right? It's initially, so I used to teach my kids all the time that certain things that the government did not want to put their foot down on, they made it a state right. So then they could later
Right.
on say,
Right.
"Oh, it's a state right." And it's a lot of, and if you think about a lot of the topics that have happened recently, the federal government has kind of stood back and given statements on it, but
Hmm.
they're like, "Nope, it's a state right." Roe versus Wade, it's a state right. After they dropped it, it's a state
Right.
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 Our education system, No Child Left Behind happened, but then we're going to put this federal legislation, but then we're going to tell all the states, we don't care how you do it. We're just going to tie it to money. So now you got to do it, right? And so this idea of
Yeah.
control and where money is, education is a business. And I think that's what a lot of people also forget. It's a business. So
Yes.
if it's a business, the
Yes.
purpose is we do want students to come out successful. We should be building this generation of more intelligent people. The Department of Education came out with something that was interesting yesterday about their goals for the next few years to make our students more globally accepted, and to be more globally competitive. And I was just like, wow. One of the big ones that stand out to me, and when I say this, you'll be like, I know why that stood out to her, is that building a pathway for our students to be multilingual. Um, I have certain views on that, as I navigate being over something like that too. Um, but going to other countries and realizing that I went to Germany this past summer for a study tour, and I had to learn German. It is not the best, but it was enough for people to acknowledge, wow, she went as far as to learn it. So now I'm going to be nice enough and use English. But the idea the idea was they
Yeah.
knew that I did enough to learn it, that I was going to, that I didn't just come here and was like, I'm American, so I know you know how to speak English, because most of them do, but I am in their home, and so I'm in their home, and I should have do enough to learn. And I met some students when I was in Germany at the school, and the students were learning French and Swedish, and like they were learning all these languages because it's so close, right? So we can learn so much.
Hmm.
Whereas I come back to the United States and I think about how many of our students are not. So we want them to be these competitive kids. We want them to be able to compete in the world that they live in, and they only know one language that really isn't even the dominant language of the world. We make
Right.
it seem like it is, but it really isn't. You and I both know that, right? From our studies,
Right.
it's not. But we make it like it's okay. Versus the reality is, years ago, if we really wanted to make our kids as competitive as we said, streaming um, multiple assessments of reading and math isn't what's going to get them there. It's all the other contents that we, avoid, which is going to help them build up. Like, so building our kids up through civic education and social studies, then maybe our politicians will represent more of the world and country that we live in versus a small majority um, of people that represent us that's not representative of the country we live in. Um, we have less women, we have less people of color, we have less. So, and but that is mostly because if you look at historically, those students are not in those marginalized communities don't get to experience social studies and social science until secondary school because we are so concerned about if they can read or do math, but we're not utilizing the tools to help them do those things. So, reading about civic education, reading about science. And so then when you look at the communities that have less scientists, less political scientists, less engineers, and different things like that, lo and behold, as you continue to look, what communities do those fall in your marginalized communities, and when I say marginalized communities, I'm not just talking about race, I'm talking about economics, because right now that's one of the bigger components. Um, is economics. And so economically in
Yeah.
those communities, that's not what we're teaching kids because they're we need them to the thing is, well, they don't know how to read. Well, what are they reading? What is it of interest? Are they reading things to represent what they look like or what they're experiencing or the life that they're leading or with the life that they are seeing every day? No, they're not. Are they reading about the world outside of their community? Because as we also know, is the schools that our kids go to are representative of the communities that we live in. Nobody is sending their kids to a school that doesn't look like the neighborhood that they're around, unless you're purposely saying, I'm doing this so that my kids can be experiencing others.
So I was going to ask you, is our current educational infrastructure the proper infrastructure for us to make our kids more global friendly? And you answered
Oh,
that. You
okay.
just answered that. Um, you answered that. You already answered that. So, and this conversation has to happen. I think it has to happen in small pockets, but I also believe it has to happen en masse. Years ago, we used to talk about marginalized communities, right? And I asked this to this day. I ask this question in my class. Your mom sends you to the store to get a loaf of bread. There's no bread at the store. Well, let me ask you, Nichelle. Your mom sends you to the store to get a loaf of bread. What would you do if there's no bread at the store?
I'm going to another store to find bread.
Right.
I'm not going to come
But
home
if
without
you
bread.
right, but if you live in a marginalized community,
There's only one
maybe
store.
there's only one place to get bread
Yep.
from. And if that store doesn't have bread, guess what? There's no bread tonight. We're not having bread. We're not gonna have toast for breakfast or whatever it is. So when we start talking about perspectives, I always like to use that example in my classroom because, well, of course, there's Walmart, there's Target, there's Kroger, there's HEB. But if you don't grow up in a community like this, it's the corner store. Like where I grew up, it was like Dud Bro. Long time ago, long time ago. If people where I'm from, if you know that, you old, right? But that was like it. And if Dud Bro didn't have any bread, maybe you could walk to the Piggly Wiggly if the dogs weren't loose. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So like communities are
Yep.
different. Communities are
Okay,
different. Nichelle,
okay.
we've been kind of going in for a while. Let me ask you this. I know you've touched on it a
Mhm.
few times already, but precisely tell us, what is your why? Why is it that you do what you do?
because someone did try to do it before me. So I had other educators who saw in me, hey, you can do more. Um, I dedicated my book to one of those educators because I think she's the reason why I'm a teacher. Eh,
A book.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's put a pin there. Tell us about this book, Miss
So
Pinkney.
I remember I told about the person about the flowers, Miss Stern.
Hmm.
I wrote co-authored a book called Civil Discourse. Um,
Big time.
and it was written to encourage and build communities within our schools. Like, what does that look like? How do we have, like, how you and I are having this conversation? We're having this conversation because we actually have built a culture together where we can do this, right?
Hmm.
You set some boundaries. You allowed me to see what was going to happen here. How does it look? You gave me the guardrails, so many components. You made me feel like I belonged in this present. You allowed me, like, you actually followed almost all the components of what we talk about in our book. So we first had the courage to talk about this. You
Yes.
you really did. The courage to be able to say, hey, we're going to talk about this. We built understanding over terms of what we thought. Like, we talked about our and knowledge. I'm not just talking about just because I'm an African American woman that I'm talking about race. I'm talking about all kind of marginalized groups. What falls into that? So we acknowledge that we're not just talking about one thing. We set up this idea of belonging. You set up the guardrails for me. Hey, I'm a be empathetic to you so that you don't feel like this is going to be like some crazy questions. You gave me a list, even though we haven't done some of them, but you gave them to me to prepare me, right?
We're on
I
our way.
know.
We're on our
And
way.
so then the last part is really having that discourse, what we're doing. So you did all these things ahead of time so that we can have a clear and honest conversation. And a lot of times in our schools, well, it's evident in the news and what we see and all the legislations that are happening is that we haven't been doing that. We've had a society that has been afraid to talk, so then we don't let our kids talk. We don't talk about um the other day somebody said to me, that's the two things you don't talk about. You don't talk about religion and you don't talk about, like, they have this list of things that you shouldn't talk about. And I'm like, and that's why we're broken, because you don't want to talk about religion.
Yes.
You don't want to talk about
Yes.
politics. Heck, there's places some people are, they don't even want to, you talk about wage, the lack of wage equity, that idea when people say we're not supposed to be talking about our salaries. Well, why not? We're not
Hmm.
supposed to be talking about it because you're afraid that you may be getting paid more or less than what I am, and we're doing the exact same job, graduated from the same place, all these other things, but you don't want to talk about it because you don't want to look at the disservices here. And so that idea of these hush hush things versus let's really set up this community to talk about it. And sometimes you can't change it, but at least you can have those conversations to acknowledge, hey, they know this, they've gone through the same things I have. They experienced this, or I can grow from it, or at least now I understand how they see the world versus how I see it. And it kind of makes it easier for me to deal with Johnny at the baseball park tomorrow. When the other day I ran away from him because I was like, he doesn't understand the world I live in, you know. So just being able to do that, and we haven't done it for a long time.
It's important because the zone I learned a long time ago. So there's your comfort
Mhm,
zone, and then the zone right outside of your comfort zone is the growth zone.
mhm,
Right. So if we're gonna grow, we have to have some of these conversations. We have to learn how to have civil
yes,
discourse.
yeah,
Okay.
yep.
Okay. So I did interrupt you to talk about your book a little bit. Please continue on with your why.
So my why is that someone else did it, and so I remember leaving, graduating from high school, leaving and going all the way to North Carolina, to a place where most of the students did not look like me. It and at first I was like, I can't do this, but then I kept telling myself I can't go back. Like, if I go back and don't finish, then everyone's gonna be like, oh, she went all the way there, she couldn't make it, and all
Yeah.
these other situations that happened. So I finished, and then I decided to go back home. And what did I do? I went back home and taught in the place that someone instilled in me that you can do more. So my first 10 years of education was where I came from, and not from the perspective of, oh, she went back home, but the perspective of, I need these kids to know that, learn and see the world that I just saw, so they know that it's more. You can always come back to where you came from, but you need to go out and see so many things, and it challenged me. So my why is all the young children that that will get to leave that small town and see more, and to be able to do more, and to be able to make the world a better place. Because at the end of the day, that's what we should be doing. Like, we should be leaving areas better than when we got there.
Leave it better than we found it.
Mhm.
Nichelle, thank you so much for sharing that. Should be there. Okay, so listen, before we get to the next segment,
Okay.
Nichelle, I'm talking to everybody who's listening or watching. So here's what I need y'all to do: like, subscribe, hit that little notification bell if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast, especially if you're on Apple, go to iTunes, give us a 5-star rating, share it, tell a friend. Okay, Nichelle, we are getting ready to move into the exit ticket. Okay, now this is a longer exit ticket than you would maybe use in the classroom. This is a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
Okay, so the five is the furious five. So I'm going to ask you five random lightning round type questions.
Okay.
Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready. Okay.
Okay, this question I ask everyone. Okay, this is a constant because I get great answers for this. Okay, if you could have a superpower, what would it be and why?
I think I would want to be able to. Uh, I would want to know what was happening. I know that sounds bad to say. Like, I want to be able to. The unknown drives me crazy, and so, like you talked about, the
Okay,
change, the unknown. So I want to kind of know.
okay.
Maybe not everything. I don't want to be omnipotent. I don't want that, but just to know in certain situations.
So kind of like a level of mind reading, kind of
Yes,
maybe.
but not. I don't want to be. I don't want anybody to think, oh, she must be. No, no, no. I don't want to know everything.
I don't want to know everything. Yeah, like I used to watch these vampire shows. You had to invite the vampire in. Like if you invite me in, I can read your mind, but only if you invite
Yes,
me in.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right, here we go. Question number 2. What first world problem do you struggle with?
I think convenience. You talked about it with the example with like the bread thing, like not acknowledging that, hey, the idea that I can say, oh, I'm just gonna go to another store. Like, how dare they not have it in this store? And I have to go to the HEB and this, like that idea that we don't realize how convenient our lives are.
Hey, that's true. As you were saying that, I was like, man, I when I go into Kroger or somewhere and they don't have what I want, I get really
Yes.
upset. Oh my goodness, first world problems. Okay, here's question number 3 of the Furious Five. Fill in the blank. I never met a blank I didn't like. What you got there?
I've never met a person that I didn't like.
I believe that too.
Hmm.
I believe that 100%. Okay, I got 3 questions, but I only got two that I can ask. Ooh, which one of these three do I want to ask? Okay, let's go with this one. What is something you have rated 10 out of 10?
Ah, so I'm gonna go totally not educational. I'm gonna say my love for Shonda Rhimes with her shows from,
Are you a Bridgerton fan?
yes, I am, from Grey's Anatomy to Scandal to How to Get Away. I've literally seen all of them multiple times. She is like an amazing, amazing writer.
She is. Have you ever met her?
No.
I'm asking like I know her and like I could
Oh,
connect
I
y'all.
was
I
getting
don't.
excited, Mike. I was like,
But
what?
one of the things that I like to do is I like to put stuff in the atmosphere,
Okay.
right? So
Ah,
Shonda Rhimes, one day I need to introduce you to Nichelle Pinkney. Okay?
yes, let's put it out
Don't
there,
forget.
Mike.
So
Yes.
when I meet you, Shonda, please remind me, okay, that I need to introduce you to Nichelle Pinkney. She is one of your biggest fans. All right. All right, here we go. Last question right here. Last question in the Furious Five. What question would you ask the president if you were guaranteed a 100% truthful response? What would you ask the president? 100% truthful response.
Oh, I wish it was a different president. Um, uh,
And listen, it's open ended. There've been multiple presidents, so
oh,
pick a president. Pick a president of your choosing. What would you ask if you would get a 100% truthful response? Who's your president?
I would want to talk to people. Gonna be like, ah, Donald Trump, and I would want to ask him, why did you truly run?
Hmm. Wow, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
America would definitely tune in for that. It'd be like the highest rated one question show ever. Ready?
Okay.
All right. So now we're going to the funky
Okay.
four, okay? This is the best advice you've received in the following areas: physically, mentally, spiritually, and financially.
Okay.
All right. So give us the best advice that you've received physically.
So the first one, I guess, with I'm gonna be the woman to tell my age here, turning 40. Stretch every day. I know it sounds funny, but
No, that's real.
literally.
That is real.
Like there are my older sister was a joke. She was like, "Yeah, 40, woohoo." She's like, "Wait till tomorrow." And I thought she was being funny. And the next day I was like, "Oh my God, there are body parts that are hurting that have never hurt before." And so as I watch my parents as they get older, as I watch people, my great grandfather lived to be like 103. And I think about just the idea, and he used to say like he stretched every day. He walked around every day, like literally when he passed away, he was living on his own, taking care of himself. So that idea of really stretching every day. And that could be your body, that could be your mind with puzzles and game like these things, things that really matter, not just streaming TikTok and all that, but actually doing something with your mind.
No, that's real. I got a buddy who is a physical therapist, and he says for every decade of life that you have lived, that's the number of days you need to commit to like a stretching routine per week.
Oh, I'm not
So,
following
you
that. I
know,
need to do better. But
listen, I stretch. That means I'm stretching almost every day.
yeah.
Uh, but that is real. Okay, so that's physically. All right, mentally. Best advice you've received mentally.
So I listen to a lot of podcasts, and one of the big podcasts that I listen to is by Brene Brown about being a leader because I'm in a leadership role, so
Hmm.
want to do better, right?
Hmm.
And she was meeting with Mike Irwin. He wrote the book Leadership is a Relationship, and one of the things he talked about was resilience, and he talked about we are most resilient in community. So a lot of times we're resilient. People talk about resilience, and it's in like this solidarity, and it really should not be. We were made to actually, well, to be with others, and so you build resilience in your community, or it's like how your podcast has in that network, like in this group of people, this community that you've
Hmm.
created belongingness, that's where you build true resilience for different things. And that for me mentally just reminded me that I don't have to go through things alone, that that's a choice to be in solitude, but that I have this community that I should be able to rely on, and vice versa.
Oh, that's rich.
Mhm.
That's rich. Rich stuff right there. All right. Best advice you've received spiritually. Best spiritual advice.
I'm gonna have to go with what something my mom always told me, that God puts you in places. Um, so like every day I go to work, she used to tell me that I'm going to work because God put me in that place. And it just changes your view when people say things, when people act a certain way, because I'm here for the children. I am. That's my role. But I'm here to show what God has done in my life to children, to adults. So if every day I'm living and I'm doing things to praise God for allowing me to do those things, then it just changes how you go to work. It changes when people make decisions that you don't like. It changes. And don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect at this. I have some days I'm like, I failed God, so I'm gonna have to make some apologies. But I go to
Right. Right.
work not for those people. I go to work because I'm thankful that God put me in a position to be able to do this with these people, and they should see me through the decisions, through the things I do, through the people I'm servicing. And so it was one time my mom said that, and she changed like my whole mentality. And I was in the classroom at that point. She changed my whole view on why am I going to work, and who am I going to work for, and who am I magnifying and edifying when I go there.
Listen, the best thing about this podcast is that I'm helped more than probably anybody who listens because I get to talk to all of these wonderful people like yourself who gives all of these gems, these rich gems. That is good. That is so good, Nichelle. All right. The last of the funky four. What is the best advice you have received financially?
to I don't know if I've done a good job at it. I'm doing better now. Um, to be able to help others. Um, the good thing someone told me was when you give to others, don't expect it back. So a lot of times, because you're giving it once again, it goes back to like when my mom said spiritually and all that, that I'm thankful that I'm in a role because of this. So because of this, the money I receive, the things I receive, I know that it's because I'm being allowed to have this. So then when it's time for me to put it in places to grow other places, then it should be that way. And I give it with the intent of it's not coming back, but it's going in somewhere. And that's a hard thing. I remember somebody once told me, if you can't give it to someone and not worry about it, you don't need to give it away.
That's good
Yep.
stuff. That's good stuff. All right. That's the five and the
Ah,
four. Now we're down to three.
okay.
This is three recommendations: one book, one song, and one podcast, or it can be a combination of the three that has been life changing for you. What you got for
Okay.
us, Nichelle?
So I had to write this one down because I was like, oh my God. So I would totally say
Okay.
my book, but that's like vain. So the book that I'm reading right now that I'm really, really liking is called, and I'm a social studies teacher. So let's preface that, but it's good for anybody. It's called Social Studies for a Better World, an Anti Oppressive Approach for Elementary Educators. And it talks about equity and social justice in education. So it's about building equity and social justice within our younger kids early because that's the where we have to start because everyone else already has their opinions but this group doesn't,
Right.
so what is it acceptable so kids don't go in the world thinking about race automatically. We do that to them.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so
Right.
then the podcast, there's a podcast called The Sum of Us with Heather McGee. If you have not
Hmm.
heard it, or if you're not a podcaster, you should read her book. It's titled the same thing. It's thebomb.com.
Okay.
It's really
Okay.
good. I listen to it while I work. I've listened to it like 4 times, and the song was really hard for me, because I just like a lot of different type of music.
Okay.
So I really
Okay.
could not pinpoint one song that was life-changing for me because there's so many, so and I figured you wanted me to stick to one, so I don't
No, you do not have to stick to one.
Oh,
You do not have to stick to one. So
yeah.
this is what so for those of you out there who may not be in the education world, this is like when you teach kids who are really smart, this is what they do. They're like, "I can't color outside the lines. No, give me another paper." So it is perfectly okay. It's perfectly okay if you got more than one.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, no, he's gonna make me stick to one song." And I don't have
No,
one. Um,
not at all.
so I think I would say one of my favorite songs and, would have to be oh my goodness. So I'm gonna go a gospel song on you because that's what popped in my head. The song "Order
Okay.
My Steps." It was done by the GMWA Mass Choir, and that one is a big song for me because the lady who initially sang it, my
Mhm.
I don't know that lady, but the lady who tried out with it for it with her was like my teacher in school.
Okay.
And the only reason I know this is because I used to be a part of the Texas branch of this when I was a little girl and a teenager. And so I remember when they did that song, and I remember she was gonna sing. She was one of the people that was gonna sing it, and the lady who got chosen, she did. But the my teacher, she was my theater teacher. She's actually one of the reasons why I was saved and everything because she just that was the type of teacher she was. She used to sing it at church all the time, and I was like, man, she's not the lady on the track, but I used to think growing up she was because she just sounded like it.
Okay.
So that's my
Okay.
song.
Okay. Okay. Good. All right. The five, the four, the three.
Okay.
Now we're down to the two, and we call this two do's. So give us two things you plan to get done in the next 90 days, 6 months, or a year. Either of
So the
those.
next 90 days, I hope to take a vacation. And this is a big feat for me to say I am going on a vacation and I'm gonna cut off everything and do something for myself. And it's not even gonna be tied to
Yes.
work or presenting or anything like that. It's just
Yes.
gonna be me chilling with some people that I really care about. And then in the next 6 months. Uh, I mean, I have a big job here, so that'll be that'll be what I'm conquering. And in a year, I'll be presenting at a big conference that I'm super excited about. So really preparing for that, so that when I go, they see the joy that I have for my content and what I'm talking about. So that's what I'm really focusing on right now.
Yes, that is awesome. World, the portions of the world that have not met you yet, y'all just get ready because she's coming to your corner of the world. All right, this last one. All right, this we used to call this you didn't
Mhm.
ask. So 5, 4, 3, 2. Now we're down to the one. Give us one piece of unsolicited advice. Nobody asked, but we're going to give it to them anyway. What do you have for us?
You can change your situation. Just get up and do it.
Oh, that's good.
Hmm.
Just get up.
Yeah.
Just get up and do it. You can change your
Hmm.
situation. Nichelle, this has been awesome. Listen, everybody, if you are listening to the audio podcast or if you're watching on YouTube, again, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell so you get notifications. If you're listening by podcast, like, share. If it's on iTunes, go ahead and give us that 5 stars. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. Follow the network with Michael Prazier on Instagram, Facebook, the underscore network underscore podcast on Instagram, the network with Michael Prazier on Facebook. Listen, y'all. Also, make sure you check out the show notes. Nichelle's recommendations are going to be there. We're also going to make sure we have her Twitter there and her book. We need to get out there and go purchase that book so we can learn how to have some civil discourse, people, and get out of our comfort zone. Listen, y'all, subscribe to the network. You never know, you might need it. Until next time, y'all be sure to make love the culture. Thank you.